IVM.
We're Team Explainer. Welcome to an all-new episode of Press Eagle, a weekly podcast where we take Explainer's mission to declutter the news one step further. Check out our newsletter for more stories and follow us at ExplainerIn to keep up with all the fun things we plan for our Explainer fam. So sit back, relax, and don't let the news give you the blues. I'm Sarah, your host for the day, and today we have both Vagda and Prafulla on the episode, so a full house after almost a month. Woo! Like always, we have 3 segments for you. In our big story, we will discuss the biggest news of the week, the brand new COVID variant, Omicron, that was detected in South Africa. In our food for thought section, we're going to make a valiant attempt to understand what the hell the metaverse is and why everyone is jumping on this bandwagon. Finally, we will be roasting or toasting our fave and least fave items. Okay, let's begin with our big story. So let's start with why the hell do we have all these new variants popping up every now and then? I mean, just when you get a little used to living with COVID, brand new variant just drops, as Twitterati would say. Yes, all the new year, new me jokes apart, it's actually fairly simple. The longer the pandemic stretches, the more opportunities the virus has to keep replicating itself. As infections spread, variants typically evolve in immunocompromised patients who are ill over a long period of time. The Omicron variant likely evolved in an immunocompromised person, possibly in an untreated HIV/AIDS patient who had long-haul COVID. So the variant was first spotted in Botswana, but its emergence was confirmed in South Africa. It has since been detected in countries like Japan, Australia, Belgium, Britain, Hong Kong, and Canada, amongst others. Totally, as of when we record, there are 226 confirmed cases of Omicron in 20 countries. However, there have been mercifully no confirmed cases in India. We've had close calls in terms of panic for the virus with a travel history from South Africa, but authorities have ruled out Omicron in at least 2 of them and are still testing the rest. Currently, Omicron is one of 5 WHO declared variants of concern. And no, I thought almost all variants would be variants of concern. Seemed like a likely thing. But no, I was wrong. Not all new variants are declared so. There are at least 7 that haven't been as worrying.
Yeah. Oh, so there is some trivia here that I want to mention about the name Omicron. WHO names the variants on Greek letters, and it's already got these 5 variants of concern and 7 other variants, which it's going in sequence, but it skipped 2 letters, Nu and Shi, to name this one. One sounds too much like New, and the other one is a common Chinese last name, Xi, President Xi Jinping. So they skipped these 2 letters to go to Omicron.
Yeah, sounds smart not to have the Chinese take more about this virus.
Yeah.
The first wave was horrifying. It was just blatant racism. Anyway, So what's the deal with Omicron and why is it so worrying, so to say? It basically has 50 mutations in total, of which 32 are in its spike protein. And any changes in this spike protein are worrying because that's the part of the virus that's targeted by vaccines to block the virus from entering the human cell. And of these 32 in the spike protein, 10 are in the exact bit that's called the receptor binding domain, which is what helps the virus attach itself to the cell. In comparison, the highly infectious Delta variant that was the last shit show that we had only 2 mutations in this specific location. So yeah, I mean, that doesn't sound ideal. But other than this, as of now, we don't actually know anything definitive about the virus. You can have a look at 2 explainers we've done on Explainer, but a lot of it is just early research because scientists are still honestly in the process of conducting extensive tests. Despite this, several nations are now selectively shutting down travel to impede further spread. But does the variant actually call for such knee-jerk reactions?
So even with such little information, the US, Canada, UK, and the European Union announced almost immediate travel bans from South Africa and other South African nations. Japan and Israel completely shut their borders. India also has restricted travel from certain countries that it has identified as at-risk countries, which include many of the European countries, including the UK, South Africa, Botswana, Mauritius, and Zimbabwe, yes, but also Brazil, China, New Zealand, Singapore, Hong Kong, and Israel. Bangladesh was also on this list, but it's since been removed from the list. It's not at risk anymore. But point is that it's kind of become like a standard operating procedure. It's like an SOP, yaar. Rising COVID cases, sabse pehle travel restriction lagao, sabse pehle. And this is when all the studies say that it does not help in keeping the virus at bay. It only buys you a little bit of time to prepare, which in the case of India, if the two waves have taught us anything, mean only time, no preparation. Now, like, look at Japan. They imposed a strict ban over the weekend, literally a full ban. Like they shut their borders. And on Wednesday, they reported their first Omicron case. So really, how much time did that buy you? 2 days?
Yeah.
One scientist at the Yale Institute of Global Health said, and I quote, that from what we know about the epidemiology of the COVID-19 virus and this variant, the horse has probably left the barn. So while introducing a travel ban gives a false sense of relief that the virus is being contained, it really just undermines scientific transparency, because why would a country then want to tell the world that they have, variants or they have something that will infect the other country? And we saw this in operation in our own country, when the second wave was going on, didn't we? We all know of hospital administrations being told not to report cases for the sake of the government. Sarah, how do you feel about that?
How do you suppose I feel about that, Vagda?
Okay, so not just scientific transparency, but it also leads to heightened racism, discrimination, and xenophobia. In the case of Omicron, though the variant has been reported in several other countries in Europe, Asia, and North America, travel bans are largely being imposed on South African nations. For example, one of these cases was found in Belgium, had no contact or travel with any of the South African nations, suggesting that community spread was already taking place. And guess what? On Tuesday, the Dutch Health Ministry found the variant in 2 test samples taken 10 days ago. And the Dutch had earlier said that they found the variant among passengers who came from South Africa on Friday. But the cases that are now being reported as variant cases were taken before those cases happened. And they don't even know if these people have any travel history. So it's not even about South Africa. The only thing that South Africa has played a role in is identifying the variant because they have kick-ass technology in genome sequencing. So it's literally getting punished because they have better science. And Twitter was awash with allegations of racism and xenophobia. Comparisons were drawn between how, when the UK and US had surges in the cases of Delta variant, travel bans were not imposed.
Mm-hmm.
I don't disagree with any of it. The difference in response is stark and unsettling.
Yeah, and just like both of you said, the pandemic has shed light on how a lot of policy making is just knee-jerk reaction always. The way the UK immediately placed travel bans on African countries once Omicron was detected, it's also gotten everyone and their mother talking about global disparity again, which I suppose is good because I feel like we've gotten very desensitized to it, right? But in the last 2 years that we've been in this pandemic, we've seen how the countries in the so-called global south have been blamed for surges in Europe and in the US, or how countries have been bearing the brunt of vaccine patents. And all of this is while richer, mostly white majority countries hoard vaccines and then debate whether or not they actually want to take the vaccine.
I think a good parallel to draw here is we're still trying to reach better vaccine coverage in our countries, whereas the global south, global north, so to say, is still talking about do we need booster shots? But we haven't gotten our first shots as yet.
Exactly. And I mean, in India, at least, we've covered a bunch of the population, but then in lower income countries, as compared to us, the situation is so bad that these nations are currently incapable of vaccinating even 20% of their populations by the end of this year. And
that's terrible.
Yeah, and in the Democratic Republic of Congo, there's only a 0.1% of the population that has gotten only their first dose of the vaccine. And this is after vaccine rollouts happened and governments pushed them out. So much debate about vaccine exports happened, and yet people are not vaccinated. And also, this is despite the existence of organizations like the African Vaccination Acquisition Trust, and COVAX. Both of these are major players in the vaccine equity movement. They're both trying to get vaccines to all these lower income countries. And according to reports by both VAT and COVAX, countries that receive vaccine imports should, in theory, be able to absorb every single unit of what they're getting. However, because vaccine hoarding is such a big problem, they're not using anything but most of what they're not getting, because by the time the exported vaccines reach them, they either spoil or expire. And which already shows you how much of a disparity there is in the countries that are exporting the vaccines and the ones who desperately need them. This last and to make matters worse, this last month, the Biden administration has been in talks to increase production capabilities of both Moderna and Pfizer. But everyone involved in these talks has been fighting against waivers for vaccine patents, which would, so if the waivers happened, this would let countries develop their own vaccines without needing licenses, which having to license governments to allow them to vaccinate their people is just dystopian at this point. This disparity, we can call it medical, global, racial, whatever, it's not even remotely new, because I found out while I was doing research. Did you guys know that the only vaccine that has been WHO approved for manufacture in the African continent is very, very small amounts for yellow fever?
Really?
What? So they're not, African countries cannot, none of the African countries can make vaccines other than of yellow fever.
Yeah, and apparently the only institute that can manufacture the vaccine for yellow fever is in one country, Senegal. It's just one country in the entire continent that is WHO approved. So the situation is really, really bad. And now we're heading into the third year of the pandemic with a shiny new variant. But look at how people's lives are at the mercy of pharma companies, right?
Oh my God.
I think in the beginning of when the pandemic began, there was a lot of people saying global pandemic, and then there was a whole bunch of people swearing and saying, it is global, you don't have to say it. Maybe we should say it so people remember that if anything goes wrong in one part of the world, it does actually go around. So maybe we should remember the whole world is going through it, and then we won't have.
But who even cares, right? I mean, even though it is global, did you see people wearing masks?
I think even selfishly speaking, see if there was better vaccine coverage, maybe these variants wouldn't be as common, right?
Yes, like that.
Even if it's as stupidly selfish as that, maybe that way, if you remember, it's a global pandemic.
But you have to understand that. You have to understand that it's coming because everybody doesn't have a vaccine.
And if you have the capability, you should just have that much common sense to, go get yourself vaccinated instead of debating whether or not you want it.
Anyway, we will be right back after a short break. You're listening to Press Decode on the IVM Podcast Network.
Are you looking for finance products and services that can enhance your personal finance experience? Are you looking for a space to talk about your financial product or service? And are you looking for a crisp talk show where the conversation is all about money? Well, your search ends here. Hi, my name is Anupam Gupta and I'm host of the Paisa Vaisa podcast, and I invite you for the conversation about your personal finance on each Monday on the IVM Podcast app or the website or on any podcast streaming platforms. See you folks.
Hello and welcome back to Press Decode on the IVM Podcast Network. We're Team Splainer, and make sure you follow us at SplainerIn on Instagram and Twitter to keep up with the Splainer fam. It's time for some food for thought. Metaverse this, metaverse that. Every single day we have a new headline story about some crazy new virtual ridiculousness. And if you can't make out, I am already sick of it. And due to the personality that I have built for myself, I am fully aware I sound like those crazy grumpy uncles who refuses to accept change. But here's the thing, I truly don't understand.
No, wait, 1 second. You're 21. You can't be a grumpy old uncle.
Yeah, we've established it's a personality problem.
Fine.
It's not an age thing. I know. 21 yet sounds 40. Anyway, here's the thing. I truly don't understand it. And believe you me, I have tried, okay? I really have. Last I heard, the Facebook rechristening to Meta had everything to do with the company's plan to launch their own metaverse. And Zuckerberg had these really creepy looking avatars of himself during the launch. Please look it up. I don't even want to link it because they're just awful. But then again, the whole move made sense in my head then because it had nothing to do with like the metaverse, but it was just a big bad billionaire trying to clean his tracks thanks to the explosive Facebook papers. And I truly thought it was just a smokescreen. Turns out I was wildly wrong. I mean, yes, it was distraction, but Zuckerberg's onto something, yeah? Like that's now being touted as the next big thing in tech. Also, I love the confidence with which I'm saying Zuckerberg's onto something. Like, not that he set up Facebook and like he's a billionaire and he's smart and shit. But yes, he's onto something apparently. But like I've established, I haven't quite wrapped my head around it. So I'm just going to give you a roundup of all the news in the past 1 week about this elusive metaverse that somehow is still everywhere. Barbados straight up decided to embrace the metaverse with open arms by becoming the first country to set up an embassy in the virtual world. This consulate will offer services such as e-visas and a teleporter to transport users' avatars from between like various worlds. Make of that what you will.
Do you know what that means?
Yeah, it's like make of that what you will. Like, like all I can think of now is like Zuckerberg's promo video. My God, it was bad. Seoul, on the other hand, plans to become the first municipal government with a full-service virtual world and plans to inaugurate it as early as on New Year's Eve. Okay. Then there was a story about a Desi crypto king, Vignesh Sundaresan, aka Meta Kovan, who has amassed a digital art collection in metaverses worth tens of millions of dollars. Yeah, apparently he's a big deal and is pretty darn rich. That I understood. And I gotta say here, shout out to all the crypto boys and girls I know, because just this week I did try my hand at this crypto trading business. And though I still don't understand jack, and I only follow through what my friend told me to do, I did make a little bit of money.
Woo.
So that's basically the only reason I'm even open to understanding what this whole thing is about, okay? Anyway, Vagda, I do know you were super into it. So here's hoping me and everyone listening ends up understanding something about this metaverse fatness by the end of this episode. Yeah, no pressure at all.
So yeah, I'm super into it. But the thing is, I was equally clueless when I began. I was just very, very curious. So I dug around a bit and here's what I found. So Quartz gave me a very simple definition. Okay. If the contemporary internet experience is two-dimensional, meaning you browse and scroll through it on a screen, the metaverse is 3D, as in you'll be walking through it via connected headsets and glasses and stuff like that. And the term metaverse comes from Sarah, you have something to say?
Yes. The whole answer sounds like me in my social papers when I didn't know what to say, but I'm just so brilliantly eloquent.
So are you telling me that I'm bullshitting you? Did you not understand what this means?
Quartz. It's on quartz.
Okay, so the term metaverse comes from American science fiction writer Neil Stephenson, who coined the term in his 1994 novel Snow Crash.
So it's like virtual reality, right?
Yeah, or augmented reality, which is not all the same thing, but I'm not going to get into that because then we'll just digress. So instead, I'll just share this Quartz article, which explains the difference between virtual and augmented reality very well. Point being, the metaverse is not one thing. Everyone is developing their own metaverses. Some are in virtual reality, some are in augmented reality, some are in extended reality, which is XR. Also, you will understand in the Quartz article. And Sarah's just looking at me like, what? I don't get it.
Yeah. I'm glad this isn't a video pod because you would really think I'm a dumbass.
No, I'll give you an example. Most of us have seen these worlds in video games. Okay.
Yes.
Yes. Okay,
Yes.
cool. But what sets it apart is something that it's not a game. There is no goal you have to achieve. You're not going to get a prize at the end of it. It's just like a world of avatars existing virtually, doing things you would do in the real world, like work, play, socialize.
So it's like Sims.
Yes, but did Sims have a goal?
No, did they?
I'm not sure. I do know that there is something called Second Life that has been existing since 2003. And it's again a virtual world with like no goal. So you can just like live there, do what you want, purchase things, use the in-world currency, which is the Linden dollar. And I also checked out their marketplace, by the way, the website. They're selling all kinds of things. The categories are endless. It's like being on Amazon. and it's all digital goods. Oh, did you see on Wednesday we carried a story? So the story is that somebody bought a yacht on a metaverse for $650,000.
Yeah.
Right? That's the story. $650,000 for a yacht that doesn't exist. I mean, what the? So that is where I'm talking about. Like, there are marketplaces, you can do what you want, you can purchase things, and the categories are endless. But question is, why? Right?
Yes.
There's lots of reasons. People have been adopting avatar-based social media, gaming platforms for a long time. And the pandemic has driven all of us to find these new forms of social media to interact. I mean,
shout out to Swinery for the best Animoji content on Instagram. And
Yep.
also thank you, Vagda, for introducing me to it.
yeah, but that's how we're using avatars too. We're using all kinds of stickers and avatars, and that's just how the popularity grows. And also a big reason is that the big tech giants are like, exploring it because they're still looking for something that is the next big thing after smartphone, right? They can't just keep coming up with iPhone 15, 20, and they need something else. So are they all going to look like Second Life or Sims? We don't know. There is one metaverse called Decentraland that is very popular. Yep, it's the same one that Barbados opened a virtual embassy in. And then most recently, that South Korean capital or city, Seoul, has launched its own metaverse. Now the municipal government has made this for residents who will be able to make reservations for city-run facilities, and their avatars will be able to ride city tour buses, among many other things. So we don't know if they will all exist together or they will merge into one metaverse or exist like social media does right now. You could be on Snapchat and Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, or you could be on neither, or you could be on some. So it's still figuring out what we're trying to do. Okay. And I'm just thinking that now that this is going to become so popular and the thing, I'm wondering what's going to happen with internet governance. We're still barely even making anything in terms of internet governance. It's all over the place. It's so decentralized. And that's the point of it also. I mean, that's the good quality of it. That's why people are moving to it. But I am still concerned. And that leads me to one point about how, when we were in my 5th year in law school, we had a subject called Artificial Intelligence and Law. And one of my seminar papers we did on this rights of avatars in like gaming platforms. So yeah, it was really, really interesting. And we saw what would happen in case like my avatar got abuse from another avatar. What would happen to that? The trauma that I face, that my avatar faces, is still emotional trauma. And what's going to happen to me? Are there any rights for me in that space? That is what we were exploring. But that's what I end up thinking about when I think about metaverse.
Interesting. But what was the conclusion that you guys drew on then?
There is some jurisprudence, that says that there should be rights. There are people fighting for it. And then it depends on who the gatekeeper is of that particular world. So, but there was no conclusion because it was still very early on.
Of course. Okay, so very much like Sarah, I usually wouldn't touch tech-related stuff, even if you handed me like a 10-foot long pole. And this metaverse thing is an entirely different beast, but it did get me thinking about like the pros and cons overall, because the long and short of metaverse, in my understanding at least, is that it's just sci-fi fantasy, but it doesn't exist yet. Like the yacht that you mentioned just now. And sure, there is Decentraland and there is Metaverse Seoul, but they are years away from being even somewhat complete. So, and of course, because like crypto, which is right now my least favorite thing in the world after tech bros, it's being touted. I knew that would get a reaction, and nobody sent me emails. But yeah, it's being touted as the next big thing. And now, because it's the one thing people can hyperfixate on, everyone wants a slice. Right at the top of the current list of pros sit economic benefits and progress, which is interesting because every single time I've come across this argument that the metaverse will, help economies, it's either someone who's heavily involved or invested in tech, especially metaverse tech, or it's governments across the world, which really does make you think. But I also do need to give credit where it's due, because it's just not just jargony tech speak from what I've gathered. There is massive potential to improve the current AR, VR, XR scene for real world applications. And like Wagda said, this is a way for people to socialize and network. Metaverse Soul, for example, also wants people to take virtual cultural tours of the city, and they did say also city meetings and letting residents file complaints, although I don't understand how anybody will take a city meeting where everything is in avatars very seriously.
They did inaugurate this with the mayor being an avatar as well, right?
Again, I bring it back.
What is that?
To the Zuckerberg
it's like
video.
A joke.
He took it very seriously, guys.
Oh yeah, he was so proud about it too. But with everything, there are concerns about general accessibility, because if it were to become as widespread as Zuckerberg is planning, for example, if AI were to be introduced into the mix, then how will you bring it to less tech savvy people, like people who don't have internet access right now? Or
in fact, this was one of the concerns. Like when I was researching, I found an article which now I think I'll link in the show notes, about what the metaverse can learn from Second Life, which was that it has a very high, monstrous learning curve, which obviously prevents people from like coming to the metaverse. So how you gonna get those people on digital?
Exactly. And if you want everybody to be using it, how are you planning to let older people access it, for example? Because if you're trying to make this like a social thing, or like with Metaverse Soul, in these times, it's better if older people didn't step out. A lot of them are afraid to step out. If they were to use this, how are you going to help them access it? Also,
and it's not just about older people. I mean, case in point, Sarah.
Yeah, of course.
Ouch.
Good one.
I didn't see that one coming at all.
Yeah, so this also got me thinking, what about costs? Because right now they're spending billions to develop it. In turn, how much are they going to charge people who actually end up using it, right? And also, I'm glad that you brought up governance, Wagda, because the biggest concern right now is regulation. Corporations are leading the charge, so there is no guarantee that there will be regulations against, say, breaching or selling user data for profit, or even what about consent to marketing and advertising? Like, if you sign up for something, do you automatically consent to have being shown products from this company's list of, or this company's inventory or whatever? It sort of like ties into that whole dream advertising thing that we were talking about last week, which is right. And like, in other words, who do we look for accountability? I was looking this up to see if we have anything, and all articles, all experts just say there's so much to cover, this is so new, no one really knows where to begin.
Yep. I think this is how Facebook and everything also began. I mean, it's like it blows up and the user data is leaked and used in all kinds of spaces. And then when it's old enough to be mainstream, by then it's already done, man. And then we're here fighting about social media restrictions and governance for Facebook and for Instagram and all of that. But that's already when everything is done. All the data is gone. It's too late.
I feel like this is just all these tech giants trying to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah. And we're falling for it.
Oh, yeah.
On that note, we come to the end of this segment. We will be back after a short break. You're listening to Press Decode on the IVM Podcast Network.
Hey everybody, it's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On The Habit Coach, Ashton talks to Garima Pandey. She is the co-founder of Wandering Jane. They discuss solo travel and how it's perceived. Does the story of a fake lawyer on the run sound interesting to you? Then definitely tune into Misconduct. Raghavi and Nisha discuss the story of Ceci Xavier. On KBCD, Farad and Sunitru discuss how sometimes people don't feel inclined towards sex, some possible causes, and how it's okay to feel so occasionally. On Press Decode, Sarah and Prafula are joined by author and journalist Sandeep Roy. They discuss the no stags policy that many bars and restaurants follow across the country. Do check out Hansvani, the story Tirthathan talks to us about the aspiration and challenges of widowed women. Do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Also, do remember, go check out our website, ivmpodcast.com/YouTube, to get a list of all of our YouTube channels. And remember, if you're enjoying this show or any of our other shows for that matter, please do tell a friend. And finally, we would like to thank our sponsors on the network this week: Cred, Bank of Baroda, HDFC Mutual Fund, CoinSwitch, Kuber, Intel, and Oxfam India. Thank you so much for making this possible.
Welcome back to Press Decode on the IVM Podcast Network. It's time for our final segment this week, Roast or Toast. And obviously, I'm going to begin. In a gesture of inclusiveness, a leading French dictionary included the gender neutral pronoun, Yale. I do not know how the French say it, so I'm just going to go with my pronunciations. A combination of the masculine il and the feminine elle. And a lot of French people were very worked up about it. The education minister, Jean-Michel Blanquer, called it an American woke assault on France, while First Lady Brigitte Macron declared, there are two pronouns, he and she. Our language is beautiful, and two pronouns are appropriate. Apparently, this is all part of the French being fiercely protective of the purity of their language, especially keeping it safe from the nasty influence of the English language. So there's that. But I doubt that this counts as a free pass for people to be plain dismissive of gender identities, especially in 2021, man. We're almost at the end of even this year. Get with it.
And it's always, the wokes are doing this.
Yeah, who are these wokes? I want to know.
I think it's us.
Oh.
Okay, so moving on to my favorite item. Our Tuesday edition had a fascinating art item. And yes, it is my favorite, but it is a bit long, so bear with me. Think of this scenario. You buy the original artwork of a great artist at an auction. Later, the artist tries to buy it off you and is ready to pay you double, but you don't budge. Now, he gets angry and places a curse on you, saying you'll never be able to sell it. And that is the story of the person who bought one work by Lucian Freud called The Standing Male Nude. This is exactly what the name suggests. It's a portrait of a naked man standing with his back towards the viewer. Okay. So Freud basically denied ever painting it. That is, he refused to authenticate that the work was produced by him. So the person who bought it at the auction was unable to sell it as a Lucian Freud painting. And Freud died in 2011. Now, 25 years later, 3 independent studies have concluded that Freud was lying.
Who would have thought?
What a scam, right? Now, is there a reason for this?
Why?
Yes, I will tell you. Why would I want one of my paintings back so badly? I mean, think about it. Why am I ready to pay double the price?
Mm-hmm.
They say that it's likely a self-portrait and dates back to a time when he had a homosexual relationship in his early years with fellow great artist Francis Bacon. And now it's found that Bacon had the painting with him in Geneva, and it's speculated that the two may have broken up and Bacon abandoned the painting in that apartment.
That's such a douche move.
I know. And Freud likely lied about this painting because it was embarrassing for him. And, he would rather destroy it than have people auction it. So I get Freud. I mean, I began thinking that, this is a great scam, but I get Freud, man. It's basically an art version of the modern nudes over Snapchat. And as breakup etiquettes dictate, Bacon should have destroyed the painting. So I'm just going to call this a really, really dick move on Bacon's part.
Yeah, what the hell, Bacon?
Hashtag cancel Bacon. Okay, so surprise, surprise. For once, I have a favorite item for our listeners.
Woo!
But in my defense, it is a banging piece of trivia. So up until about the 1930s, even now, but back in the good old days, medical reasoning was a bit eccentric, and for good reason. We found out in one of the last editions that cough syrups in the good old days used to be a cocktail of very medically unsound ingredients. One brand of cough syrup called One Night Cough Syrup used, and I'm reading this directly off a picture of the label, alcohol, cannabis, chloroform, and morphine, which in the article that I found, the writer put it so nicely. Heroin's classy cousin, it seems. And This is back when they used to treat asthma with cigarettes. So really, I'm not surprised that this is what they were medicating with.
Truly the good old days.
If my parents are listening, I don't condone the use of these substances.
Yes.
But maybe I should feel very bad that, sick people were essentially being medicated with concoctions very similar, scarily similar to what you'll find at a Delhi college party. But then again, it is me, so I found it funny. Is anybody surprised that I picked this?
No.
Oh, yeah. Nothing from a Delhi college party can cure you. It can only give you more problems. And that was our show this week. Thank you so much for joining us on Press Decode. You can catch us every Thursday on the IVM Podcast Network. And guys, please remember, don't let the news give you the blues.
Remember the days when our granny used to narrate once upon a time stories? Let's bring back the good old days of moral stories with Storytime Tamil. Hi, I am Ravishankar Balachandran, host of Storytime Tamil podcast. I would like you to entertain and educate your children with stories from Storytime Tamil. Tune in to the new episode sharp at 7 p.m. every day on IVM website, IVM podcast app, YouTube channel, or wherever you get your podcast from.
Given the unprecedented times our nation is going through, where positive is now a dreaded word, Smile India gets you delightful news from across the country about people and places that continue to spread the much-needed hope and positive vibes. I am Shifa Maitra, and you can hear Smile India with me every Thursday on the IVM app, website, or wherever you get your podcasts from. Oh, and did I tell you Smile India is available in both English and Hindi?